What is up, adventurers, and welcome to another World of Warcraft video. Today we're going to be talking about, I would say, the biggest complaints that happen within the Mythic Plus scene. And I'm not talking about toxicity. It's not a toxicity video, but I think if you haven't played WoW in a bit, you might be wondering what's the biggest thing that players face and universally seem to dislike. But before I jump into that, thank you guys for the support. I really do appreciate all the likes, subscribes, comments. Everybody, any way that you are supporting does mean a lot to me. I wouldn't be able to make content like this without the support. It does fuel me to make content for you guys and talk about this content. I hope this is sort of a niche of content that you've enjoyed, but let's jump into the discussion, maybe have some suggestions and some critiques for what people are talking about. The first one that came up was this one. It says, getting back into healing Mythic Plus after a long time. Am I doing something wrong, or is there just a lot of constant damage on everyone? Took a break from Mythic Plus for a long time. Last time I did this was Shadowlands Season 1. I don't remember this much damage on everyone all the time. Like, I actually had to time DPS in packs as a Holy Paladin. Now I feel the use of Shield of Righteousness. Someone risks dying of whatever random damage a pack does, and every single pack is loaded with the constant AoE damage. Now I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, and honestly it would be hard for me to list what I do, or if there's really just a lot of unavoidable AoE damage on every pack. Holy Paladin 649 level, mostly delves with 4 set tier, and I feel like I'm struggling a lot more than I should right now, since M+3 give gear with lower item level than what I have right now, or when upgraded to max roughly the same I have now. So I would say this is one of those things that if you haven't been, say you didn't spend a lot of time in Season 1, maybe you hopped in Season 2, you got into the sort of wave that you may not be aware of. I would say healers and tanks were the biggest ones affected by these waves. Tanks being the self-sustain, and healers being DPS. I think healers in that Shadowlands sort of like era became sort of this thing of, where do your responsibilities lie and what do you need to be doing? I think the common complaint was that, you know, I'm healing and I have to do DPS. This seems like a lot. I think that there are some that can get away with it, but often you'll see that as a version of you scale into doing that on top of healing versus you start out doing it and then you stop doing it. I don't think it's like a parabola or like some sort of graph where you just kind of trail off and come back. I think it truly is, you kind of start into it and it kind of ramps up the higher you go. So you could easily attribute it to that, but I would say nowadays you don't really see it nearly as much. It's a mindset. You are not responsible for people dying to abilities that can be dodged. Of course, you can try to heal it away if possible. For example, if a Priory has a Paladin that does AoE damage, you can't dodge it, so it's up to the healer to time a heal just before the AoE. The second Paladin hits shortly after, so healing again is needed. If the AoE and a Fireball hit at the same time and someone dies, it's not your fault. I would say usually what actually happens is someone gets hit by the AoE and then they stand in a mechanic, and those two have too much overlap to where a healer can't adjust. Now there are situations you can avoid it where they'll do both, but they do some sort of self-heal in between and they save it. But I think this is right in that it's usually some form of overlap of something that's unavoidable with something that's avoidable, or something that's like, say, a pool that's so big that you hit too many unavoidables all at once. And that's why those DPS situations for healers are much more or less likely. Many healers were kind of loud that they didn't like the pressing the damage button sometimes in dungeons, so Blizzard made dungeons do more constant damage or consistent damage, which causes you to actively heal more often. Yes. And this is another thing as well that I think it is. I jumped back to the meeting, but the interview with Ian Hazakostas and Potty C was talking about one of the things that is, I would say, a consequence of the add-on scene is that a lot of things nowadays simply aren't threats anymore because we've coded them into, they've been coded into add-ons, and they're not simply a like a danger or a threat, just because now you have something going beep, 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 or something visually going that's telling you to avoid it. And so it's not really a threat. What's the one thing that they do to everybody is they put circles on the ground. You can't avoid circles on the ground with an add-on. You have to move. You have to respond, the quick response. What is similar to that in effect, and that's AoE, unavoidable AoE damage. You cannot add on your way out of that. You simply, the best you can do is maybe add on to have a timer to tell you that it's coming, to precast your like kind of like have your ability ready for that AoE, but still it is going to require a quick reaction time. Right now, WoW is in a state of you have to have like where your difficulty is going to be is in how quickly you react to things. Now, how accessible those are is how much punishment are you going to take whenever you don't quickly react to those things. But for the most part, the dangers in Mythic Plus and in high level content is going to be how quick you can react to things. And a lot of us are old, right? Those things are dwindling with time. Okay, they're not getting better. So that's just the kind of the nature of it. Lower end Mythic Plus is notoriously difficult as many people are learning their classes, such as and as such don't use cooldowns. My advice would be to get the hang of your rotation. If someone does die, consider if you misplayed or if they could have stopped it themselves. I think this is where it would be a good idea for the tank mentality to come in, where it's if you're expecting someone else to do it, don't. Just don't expect someone to interrupt. Don't expect somebody to stand out of the fire. Don't expect somebody to perform their DPS as they should. So try to your best, expect the worst in a scenario, and then kind of you'll get better over time engaging people's skills and abilities, whether it's going to be a clear run and you can kind of get some time to do some DPS in there, or whether it's going to be like, okay, I need to focus because this is gonna be hard. So I also started maining healer in Mythic Plus, and one tip in the beginning might be an unpopular one is to get the plugin details that shows you damage taken. That's an avoidable damage taken. I disagree with this. A lot of the healer crowd will say this 100% to do this. It doesn't do anything in the dungeon. I'm sorry, guys. It does nothing for you to tell people in the dungeon. They're either going to get mad or they don't care. It's good for your personal information, like know what you needed to avoid, but corrections just don't happen in Mythic Plus, really, because either they know it or they don't. Like one of the things that happened in the most recent Mythic Plus I did, it was, I believe it was, I can't remember what it was now it's escaping me, but I believe it was something along the lines of like, hey, don't stand there during this, or you have to click this during, and they just weren't doing it. And it turns out at the end of it's like, oh, I just misclicked. It's either they messed up or they don't know, but it's rare if ever. And especially in the hierarchies, you're going to correct somebody on the spot and they're going to be one, appreciative, or two, knowing what went wrong. So I sort of disagree in that of having the details add on, but I get it. You know, healers just want it, I think, as a backup for whenever people start blaming the healer. So I get why people have it. I understand it, but simultaneously I'm in the boat of I don't see the value in it totally. Like it doesn't. Man, this plugin, I'm a healer of an M+ regular group and we're all friends in real life. Generally speaking, we make good progress. One day I introduced this plugin in the discussion and said in order to progress more, we should not only look at big DPS numbers, but also look at avoidable damage. This led to a very passionate and awkward discussion. I've been almost crucified about it. Since that, then I have actively looked at each dungeon, but never talk about it. See, it's good for personal use, but it's just one of those things. You guys hated when I said that the rating system add-on, the one that says like, hey, this person did well, this person did bad, that it would be nice to have like a public board, not where you can go like this person is bad, but basically they get positive karma for positive things, no negatives, only positives for positives. Everyone was like, that's awful. So I think these things, when it comes to calling people out and viewing things, it has to stay within someone's personal confines. Otherwise, it causes too much extra conflict in a space that already has so much conflict. It's just kind of the way it is. So that's my personal bag on it. Honestly, when it comes to healers and tanks, compare your runs. Do a run with two groups. See what's happening in the one group and note it. You know, like note where it's happening, and then you can kind of discern. Okay, is this something that was avoidable because of this? Typically, if you run two groups, you're gonna notice some differences that are for the better, and then you can kind of note in the future, okay, this is where I need to adjust, or I need to be prepared just in case this happens. You know, like expect or hope for the best, but expect the worst is the ongoing motto, I suppose, of players, I guess. But on the side of, I mean, like, I'm not, this is, once again, like, I don't make these videos to blame any particular thing. It's DPS fault or something like that. But on the side of a particular class, and I think everybody's kind of wondering, does anyone actually think AoE caps are a good idea? Ever since Shadowlands, I've seen exclusively negative sentiment towards AoE caps. The fact that AoE capping contributes towards the meta is bad, in my opinion. For example, Fury versus Arms Warrior. How could you ever compete with a Unholy DK Boomy doing 30 million DPS on a big pull when your spec is capped at 5 targets? Even in dungeons like Mechagon and Theater of Pain, people just skip low target pulls and chain pull mobs and accommodate the specs with actual scale with target count. I just don't see compelling reasons why all the DPS specs can't have fun in large pulls. Honestly, I want to say at some point, like to give WoW some benefit of the doubt, I want to say at some point there was, and I pulled up a video because I want to see how long it takes before I can see a large pull. They're on like a sort of a small screen, so I'll wait a second. But I want to say at some point there was a reason for it in that it offered a lot of versatility. But I personally think it's a dated concept. So just right when they went to full screen, that's the typical pull you're going to see. And it doesn't get less just because you're doing higher keys. It gets higher. It gets higher. It gets more intense. So when you have pulls like that on a constant basis, or the strategy, the higher keys you go is to chain pull, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make logical sense to do that. So let's see what the comments say. This one says, the concept was to make every spec have some sort of niche, but when it came to Mythic Plus, mega pulls are simply too strong. It is more in a way of a problem with Mythic Plus, as it doesn't offer a different type of dungeon where 2 to 3 targets would matter as much, where a couple of big pulls would skew the entire dungeon. I think it's too much work to try to tune this around, and hasn't been successful because, again, only a couple classes can actually be meta because of their AoE being less capped. Unholy is still technically capped on many of their abilities, but Blizzard has been using it as another way to slow players down, which is probably why they don't want to remove it. And players will hate it anyway, as long as Blizzard tries to slow players down in terms of pulling, as removing the AoE cap would probably be more stuff to stop you from doing giga pulls. I want to kind of like go back to like classic. This is a classic Andy take, I'm sure, in that mob pulls were more significantly, I guess, significantly notable, and less so of there's one mob, but since it's among these 5 others, that's what makes it challenging. It's not that we're pulling, not that pulling groups of 10 is a problem. It's that in pulling those groups of 10, you're pulling, say it's 2 groups of 5. One of those mobs of those groups of 5, when their abilities overlap, it's a problem. For example, if you're going like in Priory, and then you have one character or one NPC who casts a big circle to heal everybody, well, you probably don't want to do more than one of those, because then you're just going to be, it's going to be endless heals. You're going to be there forever. One mob or multiple mobs are going to stay alive a lot longer than they should, and it just becomes excessive. So that's my inherent, my problem with it is that I think that we've gotten used to trash being less and less significant. So the best thing for them to do is to throw numbers to make it more and more daunting, or make those percentages more and more difficult to reach. To me, the best Mythic Plus dungeons are ones that don't have, like they don't require a high percentage in order like to complete. But I might be in the minority of that. It just feels like right now the game is doing this thing where we're constantly moving goalposts further beyond, instead of like trying to condense and refine and make those more significant in some sort of way. TOP is a good example of a low target count dungeon where like marksman hunters are doing more than Unholy. Interesting. As a Fury Warrior, I hate being randomly kneecapped with Unholy DKs, and Boomkins get quadratic scaling and uncapped AoE. Quadratic. The issue is that Blizzard is inconsistent with their dungeon and raid design. Sometimes it's valuable, sometimes it's not. Sometimes raid has a council fight, sometimes it doesn't. Most problems in WoW doesn't just come down to spec design, but encounter design as well. However, we will see that as a class problem when it's not. I would say what would be a good solution to this, I guess, as like consistent dungeon design, is to go, I guess, to make every class, instead of having like single target, multi-target, simply offer, or I guess allow people to like, I'm a warrior, so I guess like, so maybe I'm just biased, but like stance switch, where it's like not necessarily like a talent specking thing, and more of just like well, this is the encounter I'm facing, this button. But then again, it's another button. Like who wants another button? Probably nobody. Or, I mean, this is the other thing. I think that if we're trying to really dig into that niche that no longer exists nowadays, because everything is like, you can't, I don't want to say like, I'm not fully on the extremist side of everybody needs to have a heal, everybody needs to have, you know, a massive defensive. Everyone needs to have everything that every class has, so nobody's missing out. You know, I do think that class identity is very important in that. But at the same time, I do think that there's a lot of overlap with, if dungeon design is going to be highly variable, then you should offer ways for each class to handle those situations on the fly versus making that decision beforehand, because Mythic Plus is not a plan and strategize beforehand. It is hit the start button and your strategy is on the fly. It's not like raids. So I think that's the main issue that I take with it. Give people an option to respond to that on the fly, or to be consistent enough with the dungeon design to where if someone picks it, that it's going to be consistent across the board throughout the dungeon. For example, if you're going to give me a boss in a dungeon and is like the centerpiece boss in this dungeon that has 2 targets, then I should see a majority of those fights be 2 target fights. If I'm going to have bosses that are like the significant number of things is big mobs, big tanky mobs, but 1 mob, then make it to where that's the case. Like that's the thing I should pick whenever I'm going into that dungeon, like thinking about what I'm doing going into a dungeon. That way I can sort of plan ahead in that way. Like that way you can still maintain variety, but at least going into a dungeon, you know, okay, this is what I'm going to pick, or this is the significant thing I'm going to pick. Maybe that's too much variety for specs right now, because specs are just, they're built so much into stacking a series of passives that it becomes like overwhelming to try to swap for like one particular group. But personally, like I said, I'm in the boat of, I think things need to be more of a, you're able to pick before and go, all right, here we go. I think right now everyone just picks all AoE and an all single target, you know, or 1 to 2 targets is usually the go-to. But even Blizzard themselves have stated that they hate that right now. It feels like, oh, you need to have 4 to 7 stacks of this, or you need, the best window is to do it with this to this many mobs. Like they don't like these ranges where it's just like you're having to add that to every equation, every rotation. It adds too much complexity instead of depth to combat in the game overall. But of course, let me know in the comments, you know, of course, if there's something that in this, do you think it would be a good solution to the AoE caps, or maybe like, what do you think is the root of the issue of what's causing this? Let me know in the comments, of course. And if you're a healer out there and you experienced this shift from doing DPS and now healing, did you like this shift away from doing DPS? Do you prefer the way it was? What are your thoughts? Is it a lose-lose situation? Let me know in the comments as well. Of course, if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to the page while you're at it. Of course, subscribe to our, we do Twitch and TikTok streams simultaneously, so you can follow me there, and we have discussions about WoW, as well as make some of these videos live on stream. And so love to see you there. But until next time, y'all, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.